So in this video, we're just going to go through some of the things in chapter 8 that have to do with first inversion triads, why we use them, how we use them, and a couple little things about diminished chords. And then in the next video, we'll practice part writing at the end of the chapter in the exercises they have. So the first reason that they give here on page 116 in your book, why do we use first inversion triads when we're writing? Well, to improve the contour of the bass line, because right now it's been root to root to root to root and it bounces all over the place. To provide greater variety of pitches in the bass line, it seems to be the same kind of thing. And then to lessen the weight of the 5 and the 1 chords, because when you invert a chord, so if you take it from root position into first inversion, it still has the same function, but it has less conformation or resolve of that. So 1 chord at the end of a phrase says I'm here, I'm a 1 chord, I've arrived, but a 1/6, in other words, a triad in first inversion, well, it still feels like a 1, has less conviction about what it is. And then there is what we call a special situation with the diminished 7 chord. We haven't talked about this because we've only been doing root position writing up till now, the formulas. But when you look at a diminished triad, typically the 7, but it could be a 2 chord as well, you'll notice in this case F diminished that you have an F sharp and a C on the outsides. So you have a diminished interval from the outside voice, right, and the bottom voice. And remember that the bottom controls how we feel about the harmony, how direct the chord is. For instance, you can play out like, I don't know, a G in left hand and put it in octaves. And if you sort of hammer that on the piano, you can play all kinds of stuff above, which could be basic triad, but could also be like 7th, 9th, 11th, 13th, which you could say are non-chord tone sounds too. But they just cloud and make the color complex, but it still feels like there's the G on the bottom, giving you like a pedal, like dominant sound going in the key of C. So we're concerned with the fact that when you have a diminished triad, if you have it in root position, the F sharp going to the C, the outside interval, basically the one that combines with the bass here, is what we call a dissonant or unstable interval. And you can see in second inversion, if you have the C on the bottom right here, that you still have an augmented fourth, like an unstable interval with the bass note right here. It's when you put the chord in first inversion that you, with the third here, you have a diminished interval or an augmented interval up here at the top, but not with the bass note. And so that's the least unstable version of the chord. So we usually see our 7 chord in first inversion. And so your writing will now become more contextually sort of activated. Okay, so that's the first thing right there. It says our first inversion triad should not be freely substituted for the root position, right? When it's a 6, because sometimes that feels like you're going to a 1 chord that missed hitting the 5th. So that's another exception. So generally speaking, you can have first inversion triads anytime you want. They are slightly like nicer, get along with everybody kind of sounds, rather than definitely I'm this chord or that chord. We want to invert the 7 chord because of the dissonance interval with the bottom note. And just be careful when you're going from 5 to 6, right? When you're going from 5 to 6, if you go to a 6 in first inversion, it sounds like you're trying to go 5-1 and sort of hit the wrong note instead. Okay? So, that being said, inversions in lead sheets, they don't actually use figured bass in lead sheets. So what it's saying here is that on a lead sheet symbol like this right here, if you want it to be inverted, in this case over the 5th of the chord, you put the chord plus a slash and then the note that you want it to be inverted over. And that's true even if it's a non-chord tone. I'll show you more about that in class. Parallel 6 chords. It's on page 118. What this is saying is that when you have a chain of first inversion triads, usually going up or down by step, but they could be patternized as well, as evidenced in this next example on 119. You can break chord progression rules, okay? It gets this, first off, inverted chords aren't as solid in their definition and function. So they're not saying like, I'm a 2 chord, I can only go to 5, or I'm a 4 chord, I can only go to 5, 1, or 2. Instead, they sort of say like, it's all good, right? So we can see in this Haydn piece right here, he goes from 4/6 to 3/6, which normally we wouldn't go 4 to 3, and then to 2/6, and 3 would definitely not go to 2, and 2/6 to 1/6, and 2 would definitely not go to 1. So when you have first inversion chords, they can sometimes break some rules, and basically just chain up and stuff like that. I'll give you one other example of that. I'm just going to write it right here in the textbook. Sometimes when we want a deceptive progression, we usually go 5 to 6, yes? And that's the deceptive cadence and the deceptive progression. But when you invert the 4 chord and put it in first inversion, you get, the solfege here is La, Do, Mi, or Le, Do, Me if we're in inversion. And if we invert this, it's La, Do, Fa. They're almost the same chord. And so 4/6 is sometimes substituted as a different version of 6 for the deceptive progressions. Or you can go from 5 to 4 when it's in first inversion easily, right? Okay. And then it says, well, what about writing? And getting close to where we're going to finish this. We're not going to be too concerned about 3-part textures. Most of what we do when we apply to 4-part textures can just be reduced and done in 3-part textures. But it says, look, it says when you're in a contrapuntal texture, okay, texture is relatively independent melodic lines. Doubling to use is one of the results in the best voice leading. So, I guess what it's saying here is if you're writing 2 independent lines or even 3 independent lines of melody going on at the same time, don't worry too much about the doubling. Just make sure that your lines are good and it sort of lines up with the overall arching chord. And when you're in homophonic or chordal texture, right, then you want to pick the doubling, which is, well, this is great, should be the one that provides the desired sonority. In other words, the sound you like. But let me see what they say here. They say don't double the leading tone. Well, we knew that, right? Don't double tendency tones. So the 5th of a diminished chord and the 7th of a chord, and then leading tone, right, where you find it. And then they start to say, well, you could double the melody note on the inside line or something like that more often, right? Now, these look like parallel octaves, but that's because the chord stays the same, and so that's completely fine to do, right? Don't worry about that. It's when the chord changes and the notes move that's a problem. You can check these out, but we're going to try and summarize for you. When you're doing this kind of thing, you want to double Do, Fa, or Sol first, if you have a choice. And a root, as long as it's not the diminished chord, is also good. This is sort of like a toolbox of things you can try. And then finally, you have to think about like your voice leading and ranges and things. Smooth lines are more important than anything else, I think. As long as we have a root and a third, make sure you have a root and a third, right? All right. Soprano bass counterpoint. Well, that's just like make your 2 lines sound nice together. And they give you some examples of that. Self-test, doing analysis. Okay. And so what we're going to do is we're going to end our video here, make a second video where we're going to do these exercises together. Usually a good setup is the way you make sure the rest of it goes well. So I'll stop here. We'll start again on a new video.